Today we are going to solve rational inequalities, which are very similar to yesterday's stuff. The difference is actually because of that inequality, the less than, the greater than symbol, it's going to be a lot more work for us to do. So we're going to do one, I'm going to show you one that's already done, and then I'm going to work one out with you together. So our first step is that we're going to change the inequality to an equal sign, solve it like we did yesterday, make a number line, and then figure out what way to shade on that number line. So our first example is x minus 4 over x plus 5 is less than 4. You can see that the first step they did was that they changed the inequality to an equal sign. Then to solve, you can cross multiply, or you multiply by that denominator, the x plus 5. And you would be left with the x minus 4 is equal to 4x plus 20. Solve for x, you get x equals negative 8. Now one thing that's important, like it was important yesterday, is we have to see what values would force that denominator in the original equation to be a 0. So if I were to plug, you ask yourself, what number would I plug into x so that the denominator would be a 0? In this case, it would be a negative 5, because negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So that's going to be an important point I use, as well as the answer that I found. So on my number line, if I look below, they included negative 8 and negative 5. Very important points. They also used open circles because it was just a less than symbol at the beginning, as opposed to a less than or equal to symbol. If they show a little equal to, either less than equal to or greater than or equal to, you need to do closed circles instead. So we have our open circles. And what they should do is they should really write in a couple extra points here. So let me do that quick. Maybe negative 4. And you'd have other ones as well. But now they have to test. And you can see below, they tested. They picked a number less than the circle. So they picked negative 9. And they plugged in. They saw it worked. Since it worked, they shaded that side. Then they picked a point in between the two circles, negative 6. And it didn't work, so they didn't shade. Finally, they picked a point bigger than 5. They picked 0. It worked, so they shaded that way. And that would be the final answer there. Now let's try to do one together. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply. When I cross multiply, I get x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals, and 0 times x minus 2 is just a 0. I'm going to factor. 15 factors to 5 and 3. It's going to be a negative 5 and a positive 3. And you solve these. So you set x minus 5 equal to 0, and you get x equals 5. You set x plus 3 equal to 0, and you get x equals negative 3. So those are going to be important values for me to put on the number line. Another important value to put on the number line is the number that would force my denominator to be a 0. Well, my denominator will be a 0 if x is equal to 2. So on my number line, I need to include 5, negative 3, and 2. And I'm going to include other ones. So I'm going to go from negative 4 up until 6. I'll try to fit it. Let me go by 2's. And I am going to use a closed circle at 5. I'm going to use a closed circle at negative 3. And where my denominator is a 0, which is when x is equal to 2, you should use an open circle. Always open circle where your denominator would equal 0. Now we have to pick test points. So I'm going to start by picking a test point less than negative 3. So I'm going to plug in negative 4 into my equation. So let's say negative 4. When I plug it into my equation, negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 2 times negative 4 is an 8. Minus 15 over negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. Has to be greater than or equal to 0. Well, 16 plus 8 minus 15 is 9. divided by negative 6 is negative 1.5. Negative 1.5 is not greater than or equal to 0. So this is not true. Since it's not true, I'm not going to shade on the left-hand side. Now I need to pick a number in between the negative 3 and the 2. I'm going to choose 0. It's easy. So let me check 0 now. So checking 0. Plug 0 into your equation. 0 squared is 0. Minus 2 times 0 is 0. Minus 15 over 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Has to be greater than or equal to 0. You'll get 15 halves. Has to be greater than or equal to 0, which is true. So what I'm going to do, let me show it in a different color just so you can see the shading. Since it was true that 0 was, that 0 worked, 0 is in between these two circles, so I'm going to shade in between the two circles. I still have a couple more to do. I need to check a number between 2 and 5. So I'm going to let's pick 4 and see what happens. So I'm going to plug a 4 in. When I plug a 4 in, I get 16 minus 8 minus 15 over 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0. 16 minus 8 minus 15 divided by 2 is negative 3.5. Has to be greater than or equal to 0. That is not true. Since it is not true, I'm not going to shade. Finally, I have one more to do. I had to find something bigger than that last dot, so I'm going to choose 6. And I'm going to plug 6 into my original equation. So when I plug a 6 in, 6 squared is 36. Minus 12 minus 15 over 4, 6 minus 2, has to be greater than or equal to 0. Plugging in, 36 minus 12 minus 15 divided by 4 is 2.25. Has to be greater than or equal to 0, which is true. Since it's true, I'm going to shade numbers bigger than 5. And that's going to be my final answer there. So again, these problems do take us a while to do, but you will not have a lot to do tomorrow. We are going to really practice getting these right. Okay.